Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. Let's not shilly-shally around because my web could go. I've got power. There's no thunderstorm, but my interwebs are being provided by batteries on top of a hill right now. So let's get straight into it. Richard, the results are in. Firstly, perhaps you could recap quickly what had happened, and then we'll hear what the results of your appeal are.
Well, um, it's an appeal, but not an appeal, and I'll come to that in a moment. Uh,
Uh-oh.
but essentially, what it was a drone pilot who was filming over Leicester Racecourse was being prosecuted by a local council under Section 43 of the Antisocial Behaviour Crime and Policing Act 2014, um, whereby they could issue a community protection notice, which would, under the council's policy, prohibit flying off, taking off and landing on council land or owned land by the council or managed land by the council and above its airspace. And so this went to court as we discussed before, and it didn't go the drone pilot's way because of a breach of the order that was in place. But what we did do was get some serious mitigation in place so that the drone pilot could keep their equipment, which was quite extensive and expensive. So, as a consequence of that, uh, there are two choices really. We can appeal the decision from the court, which we did not do for various reasons, or we could ask the council to revoke the community protection notice that they put in place. And if they refuse to do that, then we would kind of appeal it on what's known as a judicial review. So we'd judicially review their decision and attack the council on that basis. So before we left the court on a Friday afternoon, late Friday afternoon, I served the council with notice to revoke the community protection notice. And I gave them 21 days to do that. They responded within 21 days and they did revoke the notice. So they clearly didn't want to challenge. And so this is the appeal, but not the appeal part. They didn't want to have the legal challenge of their jurisdiction in the court on the basis of, and I think in their wording was that their admissions that there was no significant continued antisocial behaviour, and that their drone and model aircraft policy required an update so that it was in accordance with the ANO and CAP 722. And so they revoked their policy, which meant that my pilot could now, in accordance with their uh, drones and model aircraft policy, reapply to fly from those particular areas. And that is ultimately what the council was seeking to do, is make every drone pilot, whether commercial or recreational, there was no distinction between the two, apply, giving them all the information that they needed to seek permission to take off and land from council land or fly over it. Because there was no distinction between recreational users, the policy as it's written said that a recreational user, for example, shall provide details of their indemnity insurance, shall provide their route in and around council land, shall provide a copy of their risk assessment, shall provide a copy of their operational authorization. But of course, as we know, a recreational user is not going to have any of that, but a commercial user would. But there was no distinction between the two on this particular policy. So what it means is now that this particular council, realizing and being educated in the courts with respect to the deficiencies in their policy, are now going to amend it and probably make it harder for people to use drones. Who knows? Because they have they had in their policy the determination on whether you get permission or not is by the legal department, and it shall be final. So that's with respect to taking off and landing on council owned or managed land. The airspace thing, I think, is a different question. As we all know, you can't regulate the airspace unless you're a the Civil Aviation Authority, because you've been mandated under law to regulate it on behalf of the government as it's a state asset. They can obviously do that, but the council can't. And this is where I think that they may have taken advice and decided that revoking the community protection notice was easier to do than fight this in the courts by way of a challenge to their judicial decision that they've made. And so that's where we are. So what we now need to do is find another council that's prosecuted another pilot either before the community protection notice has been served, or indeed a council that will not change their position. And then we can look at how we might be able to challenge that decision in the courts. So that's where we are, Gary.
So you're going to go and look for a fight. So help me just understand a simple thing. So the council went to the bother of getting this order sought. It went to court, and then it went, oh, well. I don't understand. Surely somebody's going to have their neck in the noose for wasting someone's money, haven't they? Or the council's money.
They may well do, but the reason that they're able to sideline it in a way is by saying that there were no significant reports of continued antisocial behaviour since the notice was issued, and so that's the ultimate piece under a community protection notice, because it's an antisocial behaviour order. If there's no antisocial behaviour, the point is that they referred to March 2022. So why not in April 2022 say, oh, there's been no continued reports, let's now revoke the order? Why go all the way and fight at the courts and then get me to formally serve notice on them to revoke their order? Where do we draw the line on what the council decide is antisocial behaviour or not, and if indeed they do put an order in place, when they should revoke it or not? And it shouldn't be up to every pilot to say, well, for the last 7 months, 10 months, 1 year, you've not had any reports. Can you revoke your order, please? I mean, how is that going to work in practice? It's going to be quite difficult, because it's not in the council's interest to do that, right?
That's a slippery slope, this regulatory slippery slope. Even here in the United States, you get the local municipalities. I don't make habit of arguing with the guys with the guns, Can't change their mind. They're not totally sure what the law is, but they're out there right now, and they're kind of dictating what's happening. And all that really does is erode my rights, because I don't want to take the risk of, fighting it out with this guy or people, because I don't have I'm not a lawyer. I'm just some guy that wanted to have, a little bit of fun, or maybe take a photo or something. But, when you go down the road of knee-jerk regulation, this is what you get, and like you said, really the airspace thing they're not supposed to control, but they can tell you can't take off and land. That's kind of how the state parks here in California works it. You can fly around, but you can't take off or land on their land in specific parks.
Well, I think Patrick, that is going to be subject to case law in due course, because there are pilots that are saying, well, actually, I've parked my car on the land, but my drone's taking off from on top of my car, so it's technically not on the land. And
I'm holding it.
Yeah, or holding it, so we know you can hold it and catch the drone and everything else. Yet, although one is connected to the ground, as in your physical person, one might be able to argue that you are taking off the land because you're on it, but a vehicle could be a different thing entirely.
Would that stand though? Because surely then all they have to say is, as landowner, I don't want you parking vehicles and taking drones off from your vehicle. They could almost sort of, because they're the landowner, they have that. I know it's different, obviously, with landowner and council, but
yeah, well, that might be the case, Sean. But in some cases, if you've got a paid ticket to a council car park and you've paid to go on there, you've got a legitimate right to be in that car park, because the only condition is I pay my parking fee and I can park my vehicle there. There's nothing that attached to the ticket to say, by the way, if you park your car here, you can't fly drones, or drones can take off from your vehicle.
I suppose
What
it
could
becomes
they?
a bylaw issue at that point, doesn't it? Because there are certain things you can't do in the UK and council land. For instance, councils have banned electric scooters. You
Well,
know,
that's right, Ian. Bylaw really is the correct method here by which to prohibit behaviour, but councils are reluctant to do that because it's an expensive process. Because under the bylaw regulations, they have to go out to public consultation,
Mm.
and that is going to be lengthy. It's going to be expensive for them, and can be easily challenged, especially if they've not involved the drone community in doing so.
Do you think that with the PSPOs, do you think that there is an issue in terms of how they're actually being developed in the first place, how they're actually being implemented, in terms of a lack of oversight, actually, to check if there really was a nuisance in the first place, if whether drones should be on the nuisance list? Who is supposed to verify that what is on the council list is a nuisance? I mean, is it something that gets approved by the courts, or?
I don't think so, Sean. For the benefit of the audience, a PSPO is a public spaces protection order, and I think that there's the issue with these antisocial behaviour orders is that there's a lot of discretion and subjectivity that the council are given with respect to how they interpret any form of antisocial behaviour, and the test is quite low. It's what most councils will have an antisocial behaviour officer appointed to them.
Yes.
And as long as they reasonably believe there's antisocial behaviour, they've got an arsenal of antisocial behaviour orders that they can impose. One of them being a PSPO, one of them being a community protection notice, which is what we're seeing now.
Yeah.
So the development of that and the way that they deal with it and record it is going to be incredibly interesting in the future.
So although the guidelines that are put out to councils as far as how to form a PSPO, etc., state that there really must be a nuisance and this must not be misused and that type of thing, because of the way that those officers work, the benchmark's actually quite low, is it, in terms of saying what a nuisance is, essentially? So therefore they can get themselves onto the list quite easily.
So that's a slightly different question, Sean, because the point around nuisance has been published by the Home Office and to the police, so they've got guidance on what's a nuisance. And one of the tests with respect to a nuisance is that it must be persistent in nature. Now, trying to argue that my drone is flying for 18 hours of the day to be persistent is going to be very difficult, because we know that battery life, meteorological conditions, and other factors affect how long a drone can fly for. So try arguing that the drone's going up 5 times a day is a persistent nuisance. Really, it can't be, can it? I don't think, anyway.
No,
on any interpretation of the law.
No, indeed, I completely agree with that.
So the persistence piece Patrick, the persistence piece as an example that's given in the Home Office guidance to the police is, for example, your neighbour's rubbish being in their garden for 3 months. Now that's persistent because it's only a 3-month period. And so you've got a real difference between what is persistent and what isn't in order for it to qualify as a nuisance.
Okay, thank you.
So where are we at really with this then? So they've had a go and failed, and you've been there. So you were in the room. So it's quite handy that you were in the room. If you didn't turn up in the room, then they probably would have rolled on, and they would have got away with it, wouldn't it? They wouldn't have withdrawn it if you hadn't turned up. So what have you got in your pocket now, or your back pocket, to take to the next example of this? Is this the win situation?
Well, we now know, Gary, that if any drone pilot out there currently has a community protection notice served on them, that there are certain things that they can do. So if it was me, because obviously on this forum I only give myself legal advice. There's nobody here as a client, right? If it was me and I'm a drone pilot out there and I think, oh, Mr. X council, damn it, they've given me a community protection notice and they're preventing me from flying. Right, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to write to them and serve them notice that they need to revoke that community protection notice within 21 days, which is quite reasonable, as that's the time frame that's given actually under between a warning and the notice for the council to act. and I'll
So
construct that in a way to demonstrate that there's no nuisance as well.
So do you have time?
It's a disproportionate power.
Does that have to happen after a warning's been issued? So that can't just happen by a resident living in an area where the council has a protection order in place but hasn't been warned or anything. They can't just challenge it because they're unhappy with it, full stop.
Well, they have to give you a warning first, Sean. So
Okay.
in order,
no, but I mean, because obviously although we don't have people of that nature, we do have viewers and people have reached out to me that live in areas that have those protection orders, and they have wondered whether or not they could, as a local resident of that area, challenge it even though it's in force. From the point of view of challenging it and saying that there is no nuisance, so that shouldn't be there. But so you're only talking about withdrawing the specific warning given to that pilot rather than the overall PSPO.
Oh, so the public spaces protection order is slightly different because it's wider in its ambit, isn't it?
Okay, yeah.
So that isn't directly related to a person. That's directly related to an area. And so what they should be doing is putting a bylaw in place instead of a PSPO. That's the correct method by which they should do this. The antisocial behaviour mechanisms are a cheap cheap and dirty way of the council enforcing their position, and what they want to do with respect to that. The community protection notice, before you get one of those, you get a warning notice first. So it's important to say, because it's in that warning notice period that you should really go to town and attack the notice on the basis of its validity or whatever the case may be, before that actually would turn into an order. The PSPO is different from that.
Is there some sort of, and I'm just, I don't know how the law works there, crazy laws you guys have over there. But, so is there like some sort of boilerplate, I'm flying around and and then I could, hey, check it out. Is there something that people could, let's say, fly with and combat that, or some sort of boilerplate that they could send in and ask for this 21, this them to repeal it within the 21 days?
Well, there could be, Patrick, but I've not drafted one.
Well, maybe you can put it on your website, you charge 2 pints and a fish and chips.
2 pints and a packet of salt and vinegar, please.
So,
but what I would say is,
pickled egg.
Yeah, well, gosh,
if you want to go nuts,
you've got to be strong to have one of those, Gary.
Yeah.
What I would say, though, Patrick, the reason I think there is no boilerplate at this moment in time is simply because each council is so different in the way that they've adopted their own drone and model aircraft policy, and the way that they apply it, and the way that they interpret it. And we've got so many variables for so many different councils over here. It's so difficult to keep track of them all.
So it's just an impediment to people's freedoms. That's what you're telling
me. It is, and the case law is quite clear. In fact, this is quite a serious and onerous power that the councils have to restrict the rights and freedoms of individuals.
It's disappointing, especially, I don't know if it's considered like the airspace here. We have, it's considered like a public trust resource. The public owns it. I mean, the FAA does administrate it. There's a whole bunch of issues with that administrative law and whatever else, but it's like, hey, it's my airspace, man. I just want to go take a picture, and then you're throwing up all of these arbitrary barriers to me to enjoy my life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. I don't know if you guys have that over there. You know what I'm saying? It's too bad. It's really a shame.
Yeah.
I think the UK has "you'll be miserable and be happy about it."
I thought that was in the color.
No happiness over here.
Well,
that's why.
Yeah, but folks are asking. So the recap is that the council ran away. Is that the recap, Richard? Is that a fair statement? They ran away from making it any harder. I.e., if you took it further into court, it was talking about airspace and stuff like that. So you effectively won. So So actually, yes, the chap did end up with a criminal record and a fine, didn't he? So what happens with all that?
Yeah. Well, that still remains in place as far as I'm aware, because he was found guilty of breaching the order itself. So even if an order is defective, and it's clearly defective, once it's been issued, it must remain in place unless it's varied, revoked, or challenged in any way by the council. Sorry, by an individual to the council. So it must still be complied with, even though it can be incorrect, and the law is quite clear on that. So even if it's defective, we still must comply with it until we get the council to revoke it or amend it. And so now that they've revoked it, we've got that action and that change. Now, if they were to bring about another one, they will clearly now do it on the basis that they're going to update their drone and model aircraft policy because it was out of date.
Okay, and Danny Thomas tells us that 3 drone pilots have flown from the same spot since the order's been revoked. 0 action taken, and this is it's horse racing, isn't it? It's looking at horse races, isn't it? That's what they're after. Now, I'm glad that Ian's joined us because he's the other Ian, not the Ian that's got his head into FPV goggles all the time here. Because the horse racing thing, and that's why I'm trying to seamlessly link this. But there's quite a few freedom of information requests about some horse racing events that Ian's got out there, and that's seeking information from the CAA, who are subject to a complaint and keeping stum about it at the moment. That's about some of it, isn't it, Ian?
Yeah, I didn't really want to go to take it.
Oh, all right.
But
let's not go then.
They were what's it? They were being unnecessarily difficult. They got to the point where you get unreasonable with the freedom of information, where you simply say, we're not giving you any of the information we hold, because there might, on the basis that there might be 1 or 2 lines in that entire email that they want to keep private. Well, it's like, well, no, you can release the email and just redact those particular lines. Because for me, a lot of it's important is kind of the language being used, how familiar they're being, how professional that the process is being dealt with as well. That in itself is revealing. And that's what you get to see if you get to see emails.
Send them a black marker pen, and so they've got no excuses.
What's that, sorry?
Send them a black marker pen.
Yes.
Well, or it's been my experience with the FAA is I will ask for a search, and even the people that do the FOIA say management tells me exactly what to say in the query, and they're like, oh, we don't have this and that. And then they say, oh, well, some of this is private. We may have to redact it or whatever. But by the time you ask for a few different FOIA requests, you will notice that these people's emails and names and all the rest of that slip through. That's been my experience. I don't know how it works over there.
Yeah, I mean, what I do where I can is I'll specify. Well, to be honest, I'd like to. What you should be able to do is just ask a general question. That's specifically, I can just get a straight answer, but the reality is that doesn't happen. So if what you do is if they'll then try and do the criteria themselves, which will just accidentally on purpose miss the important documents. So that's why I'll specify the query myself. It was just like, for one, I was thinking DFT, trying to find out if there was a cyber attack discussed around about this time of Gatwick, which it turns out hours before the drone was seen, there was a discussion going on about cyber attack on aviation. Now, when I said I want what emails have you got about cyber attacks, it's a fairly straightforward question. That it's pretty straightforward. A cyber attack, software crash, ransomware, and all the other stuff around it, and we all understand that. And yet, they then said, "Oh, we'll just search on these particular phrases," and it missed out stuff like. Well, like for example, there was like software crash and stuff. So I had to put in like a list of these are the phrases I want to be searched on, and that found this email. Which, if I'd allowed the original criteria that was provided, these emails would have never appeared. But unfortunately, going off on a tangent, the DFT are just completely blocking anything on Gatwick now. They're stopping. because the only were a few final questions around Gatwick, and it was wanting to get the emails from Gatwick Airport to the DFT. Now, a lot of those are actually already out there inadvertently from another request. The DFT let those go, but then the trouble is, I think partly it's either a degree of incompetence or it is when you just telling lies, you forget what lies you've told. But they specifically said, we don't hold any emails from Gatwick Airport. And I said, yes, you do. I've got them here. And I said, they were on this page in this Freedom of Information request previously. And at that point, they said, well, we're not answering any more Freedom of Information requests for you, but you're being blacklisted as vexatious. And that's what they've done. That's what they've done to everyone that's asking questions now about Gatwick. So the final questions were to get the emails of Stephen Roberts. So he's the senior member of the DFT that left and then said on Twitter in the early hours of the morning that he knew what really happened. So they've got his emails but won't release them. And then it's trying to block seeing all the communication from Gatwick Airport to the DFT, because it's clear. I mean, I've got the very final sightings and the communications, and it's clear that they would close the airport without knowing it was a drone, even by the final day, and even when you had the counter UAS. And you'd be able to see that pattern all the way through if they release all the emails, but they don't want to because it'll just show what a balls up it was from start to finish. So unfortunately, that's where we are with that, with the DFT. With this, CAA was obviously it's kind of the issue that's been actually more covered up than Gatwick. It seems to scare people even more. It's asking, why is horse racing being given such a priority? And there's so much focus around it. You've got to consider everyone that's flying a drone is paying money to the CAA. Everyone that's tried to liaise with the CAA and said, I've seen such and such illegal drone flying, this illegal activity is on, that's going on. The CAA always categorically say, we do not deal with these issues, go to the police. They're completely Teflon, we're not doing it. And so it's like, why are they just actually giving all their staff sort of knowledge and resources on specific topics to specific companies? That just looks it just doesn't look very good. The optics of it, it's like, why are you giving a better service or any service at all to certain companies, and everyone else you just fob them off? You can't fairly.
Well, they've an example of that is, I know that the trainers have all received, training organisations have all received missives from the CAA of what their future plans are in light of what they did last week, and that's not gone out to the general public. It's not gone out to the flying public. It's not gone out to commercial operators. They're very poor with their communications at the moment. Very poor indeed.
I'll just let Patrick jump in because he looks really keen to say something.
Well, I want to go out on a limb here, because and it may work different in your respective countries, but I'm going to assume, like with the horse racing deal, that these horse racing guys make a little bit of money, and that they've got lobbyists, and then those lobbyists and whatnot get on the phone and talk to the people in the government. The people on the government talk to the CAA, and you get a little action.
The royal family. The royal family ride horses.
I mean, what's going on at the end of the day needs transparency. If the CAA aren't giving favoritism, they should just release the emails, prove they're not. And if they're not, then because the CAA, their argument is people will lose faith in the CAA if we allow emails, communications that have been with us to end up being queried by freedom of information, because people will feel that they can't speak to us. But then my argument's partly, well, you tell people to speak to the police anyway, so why don't you just, with those individuals, tell them to go to the police? And then you can maybe argue, if the police then come to you and you have the discussion with the police, that maybe you can treat that with a bit more privacy. I mean, that'd be fair enough. But yeah, at the moment, I think it looks worse to be in a position where you say, we're not giving the information, we're keeping it, we're keeping it secret, we're not answering your questions. That to me just looks worse. So to me, I think people lose more faith with the CAA from the fact that you're not being transparent, and that you seem to be having sort of a double standard. Not about double standards, like this two quality of services that the general drone community is having.
Selective enforcement, it's called.
Yeah, there's two tiers, and you're seeing that, and you're absolutely correct. I mean, we do it over here, and it's funny that you say that about the emails, because I ensured that would be in the researches, because I was emailing parties involved, and said the same thing. I like the emails for this and that, and they said they didn't exist, and I had them in my email box, sent them to them, and I go, I know they exist because I sent them to them. And it's not always going to work. But the thing is when the CAA doesn't play a square game, or doesn't act, in the public's best interest in being transparent, they erode their own credibility. And it's the same thing, Gary, you're talking about, like the new rules. You're only sending them out to some people, but you want people to be safe. And you got to, alert the public. You got to make people aware. You got to have them understand what's going to happen. And if you don't do that, your education over enforcement program is going to fall flat on its face. And I think that the CAAs are, culpable in their own, let's say, people scofflawing the rules. That's how I feel.
They're not fit for this brave new world of digital aviation. They're not fit. They're not fit for purpose. Nowhere. I'm convinced of that now. And I'm also thinking now, sort of out loud, if only we knew somebody that had civil aviation authority experience and a legal mind that was quite close to this horse racing sort of a thing. If only there's somebody we knew that perhaps had a little bit of involvement with Gatwick as well. And it seems to now be completely in the frame for this latest. Maybe it's Richard doing both. Maybe that's what it is. But it's very. I think it's interesting, Richard, that you've come to this horse racing case, and that does seem to be a new Gatwick in some ways. Not quite Gatwick. It's not closing the airport, but it's skullduggery. There's definitely skullduggery afoot, and it needs some sunlight on it.
Yeah, I think there definitely is an issue with it, especially when earlier in the year they put in a temporary airspace change or restriction on a race course for 2 nautical miles, which extended well beyond the race course, didn't interfere with any helicopter traffic at all, and prevented other drone operators from doing roof surveys or whatever work they wanted to do. It was just so broad. And so when I wrote to the CAA, I said to them that this is anti-competitive behavior, because you're now discriminating against unmanned aviation pilots from access to the airspace and legitimately going about their business trying to earn a crust. So, they obviously denied that was the case. But I think that we're seeing more and more of that, especially now we're seeing NOTAMs for drone only.
Yes. Yes.
And other exclusion zones with really large, nautical mile circumferences put in place. That can't be right on any basis, really. And so what I've argued is that when they do take an assessment from, say, a helicopter company that's now responsible for managing the helicopter traffic in a race course or an event, could be any event, it just happens to be racing, right? Could be anything. That they are properly challenged, because when I properly challenged the company, they refused to respond and give me any information, which is why I ended up at the CAA's door. And they like what you were just saying, Ian. It's not the CAA, it's the police. It's not the police. It's not the police. It's the DFT. It's not DFT. It's CAA. Well, you've got the same again. It's not the CAA. It's the race course. It's not the race course. It's the helicopter company. It's not the helicopter company. It's the CAA. And so all we do is keep getting shifted from one post to the next, because nobody wants to. Put their neck on the line or admit and take responsibility for their actions. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it is the CAA that is responsible for the airspace. So if there are any encroachments or anti-competitive behaviour, they should be dealing with that in the right way.
It's funny you mentioned as well with passing the buck, because the freedom of information became almost farcical in that when it came to Aintree, Merseyside police were just generally trying to say we're not answering. They were basically they were flat not even replying. So ICO got involved. So then Merseyside police, realised that they're under the radar, and it caught on the radar as it were, and that they can't just ignore it. So then they began replying, but then they tried to blame the Met Police. Said the Met Police had spoke to the CA, but then the CA said no, we spoke to Merseyside Police, and then Merseyside Police then provided the absolute minimum amount of information they could get away with. From what basically what the ICO had said to give, so I have to go back and ask them more information, even though they know what I wanted to ask, and it was just again where the splitting hairs over the way a question was being asked, but that's what they kind of make you do to try and grind you down from asking questions, which is unfortunate. But yeah, so to clarify, just to finish off with the horse racing and the freedom of information. So I'd asked the council that you've been discussing with that particular case if they'd had any communication from the race course in the last 12 months, and they said none whatsoever. So it's either something further back in time or there genuinely hasn't been any pressure, but it probably needs a question asking previous 12 months. So I'll do that. And as far as the CAA case goes, that was asking for some specific emails that were discussing action prior to the arrests. Because really, a lot the problem here is that it was said that the CAA were consulted. It's specifically in the Merseyside police press release. They put it in writing. We consulted the CAA. CAA have put it in writing on freedom of information. We were not consulted. So they were saying, as far as when it came to the arrest of spotters, the CAA were not, they've said themselves, they were not consulted on that matter and have no idea how someone spotting could come to be arrested. From watching Sean's show where he quizzes the police on these topics, where I think that was kind of elaborated on, that to say, well, we arrested them because we thought they were pilots. But then again, that comes back to that original press release is essentially completely and totally wrong, misleading, and that's the issue. They said they arrested spotters. They should have never said that. If they were arrested for pilots, they should have said we are arresting suspected pilots. But yeah, no one's just being straight about how all that came about, who paid for it, and all that, because the question the constituents of Merseyside will have is our taxpayers' money being used to support a racetrack on civil matters? They're not even criminal matters, civil matters. And it's like, people will want to know that. But at the moment, everyone's kind of pointing the finger at everybody else and ask them. So that's what's been going on there. And the CAA were basically saying, you're not having the emails. And they wouldn't even, which they're not allowed to say, we won't do this. But they wouldn't even say for each email what exception, what clause they were using to say we're not going to release that email. Because if you've got several emails, you can't say, well, you're not having any of them for this reason, because the likelihood of all those emails hitting the same exemptions probably pretty unlikely. And then you've got to say, well, every sentence of every email, you can't release it. Nonsense. So they actually came back after 8 months, and only because the ICO were investigating, to say, oh, these are the exceptions. Well, said one of the exceptions we'd applied is invalid anyway, and then said we're applying these exceptions, and they basically marked it email by email. But it sounds like in the emails they're essentially refusing an entire one being released because of one sentence in it, and that's over at like each one, or it could be that as an attachment. It's like, to me, that doesn't wash. You just redact that and then release the rest of it, and then there's no issue. So that's with the ICO now. So I think usually they spend a number of weeks, depending how this goes backwards and forwards, and then they'll make a ruling. So the ruling could either be, well, we're finding in favour of the CAA, they're allowed not to release it, or they might say, we accept your arguments as well, and there's a public interest and it should all be released. Or they might come to a compromise and say, this much of it should be released. I mean, I went back and I put a 2, 3, A4 pages worth of argument explaining kind of the wider issues around it. The fact that you've got an entire drone community that doesn't entirely know what they can and can't do and what the repercussions will be, because there isn't clarity and transparency around this. I mean, I don't particularly agree with the, for me, I see it as you kind of antagonizing the police, etc., when you're flying near race courses, just by the fact that really, there probably should be stronger copyright laws to stop that happening, but it shouldn't be dealt with by drone laws. So I can understand why there's probably frustration with that, and it's like we should stop it. We should stop it legally and properly and through proper legislation. And whilst that isn't there, it's like, well, if you're going to bend the rules there, where else are the rules going to be bent? And that's why when things become murky, and that's why really these things do need fighting. I put that forward. I said really that the drone community does not know where they stand while this information, because there's so much contradiction around it and everyone's blaming everyone else. And it's like, unless somebody releases this information just straight about what's gone on, we'll just be completely in this guessing game of what is and isn't acceptable and why things do or don't happen. So
Ian, what I find incredibly bizarre sometimes is that the CAA will rely on the law enforcement exemption, and yet, to your point earlier, well, no. If we need to enforce anything, the police do that, right? So why are you quoting the law enforcement exemption, especially around some of your FOI requests? And also, I mean, the law enforcement exemption is utilized quite often because it's got to be interpreted very broadly, and that's why I think it's dropped in quite a lot. But ultimately, to your point, really what they should be doing is saying what particular part of that section that relates to law enforcement, which I think is 30-31, is applicable as an exemption to prevent them from publishing to you what it is contained within that email or document, or whatever the case may be. They should really be relating that directly. They don't always do that, which is why you're now, I suppose, going down the ICO appeal route. The ICO will eventually get their lawyers involved if they don't cooperate, which is what I had Sussex Police before.
The downside of all of this, though, if I can interject quickly, all this murkiness, and the same thing with the Gatwick incident, how much, let's say, downstream bad policy and regulations have we had to, as a community, endure? And still, I mean, there's still people talking, oh, well, they closed that airport down over there in England, and golly, if we don't do something,
well, look, I mean, just last week, those drones managed to crash that Confederate Air Force aircraft, the other one. Did you see those? The where was it? Out of Indonesia or something? That crash
and there was one out of Mexico too. But I don't know. I don't know who's. I've seen that in the fringe. And possibly there were people flying there. I don't know. I've looked at the video. Things are grainy. I'm not going with any knee-jerk stuff. They better, if the regulators do go, oh, maybe it was a drone, you better find the drone or whatever, because I'm not going face value. Or who else here was doctoring up those videos? Was somebody here making deep fake videos?
Think about it.
That's partly why I'm late, because my computer's been rendering away as well. So you'll be seeing the results of that later on in the week on Twitter and wherever I can spam it.
There's criminal penalties for deepfake porn. That's criminal penalties.
Oh, there's no porn in it unless
I'm not watching.
Unless you consider listening to funny lines from a Brian Blessed copy to be pornographic, which is not, then no, there is none. But just go back to Richard's point, actually, as part of my written submission back, and I gave evidence to this, I really said, like, the CAA is playing, it's basically they're having the cake and they're eating it. when it suits them, they say, we are in no way or shape or form involved in enforcement. It's a police thing. And then when it comes to information being got out of them, they say, we're the police service of this. We enforce it. We can't provide this information because we're essentially like the police. It's like, no. You specifically make it clear to the entire of the drone industry that you do not police. And it's on their website. It quite categorically says it on their Twitter account. They're always saying, no, go to the police. So they are using that specifically for convenience in this particular circumstance of stopping information get out. And that again puts murkiness on it in that you are choosing your role. You're literally flipping it 180 degrees, depending on whether you're being asked to do something or you're trying to stop information getting out, and that's wrong. So that's where we are with that. Going on back to that thing that Patrick mentioned about I think, is this the World War II planes that crashed? And that I mean, as he saw, and I replied to an email to, I mean, that is just nonsense, because if you go to it frame by frame, the frame prior, and in fact the number of frames prior, there is nothing in the sky. There's nothing at all. It's just the planes. Now, we all know that drones do not have the power of teleportation to just appear, immediately in the sky.
The new DJI, mate. Don't underestimate it.
But for a single frame, which is so what's happened here? You've got a single frame where there's a little black square, and then people saying it's a drone. No, you can't say that's a drone. You can't say it's anything, because all it is a pixelated single black square that isn't in the sky until one frame before. So to me, it looks more like, and again, if you're talking about World War II fighters, it's very, very plausible that that's a mechanical failure. It's a bit of the prop coming off, or something's gone on with the engine and a part's flown out or something.
But you can see very clearly it's the new hypersonic matrice.
To me,
very clear.
What with the Stargate jump thing that appears, but no, I mean, to me, I would, if you were looking at that objectively, just saying of what you can say, you wouldn't be saying it was a drone, because there's nothing there to even suggest it's a drone. B, you will be thinking, what's the probability? Probably some sort of mechanical failure, and that's something spitting out, and that's why you see it for a frame just before things go wrong. But really, people should wait, and the investigators, if there is a drone, that'll be down there in the debris, and they can say, it was a drone, and we were all like, fair enough, it was. But at the moment, the evidence doesn't support that.
Well, and most, fair-minded people would say that. But you watch, I have a feeling we're going to be like, oh my God, it was a drone that did that. And you'll have, we'll kind of be dealing with this battle of Gatwick.
The worst thing with it is when you see drone accounts spamming it out. I mean, I challenged one on Twitter today for it, because they even specifically said it looks like a drone. No, it doesn't. It doesn't look like a drone at all.
But I mean, I could, I get that video I posted up there. Oh my God, get my keywords in there, and I'll be like an influencer on, YouTube making $1 gazillion. Like,
it's all about just getting the clicks, and it's really unfortunate, because the thing is, that same Twitter account and blog behind it could have got the clicks by saying drone being blamed for aircraft. But looking at something like, looking at the evidence, it's wrong. Obviously you get a punchier title than that, but it's like, you could do a shocked face. It wasn't a drone. You could do that. You could do the opposite. Get the same traffic and put out a true message.
But is that really as much fun? The thing is, as someone who's shot many, many thousands of hours of footage looking at the sky at aircraft and things, I'm pretty sure that's probably something that's an awful lot closer and an awful lot smaller, because it appears in one frame, it's there for a couple of frames, and it's gone. It's probably an insect or something much closer to the camera than the thing, and it just flies through the field of view, and it looks like it's bigger further away, but it's not. A sandfly or something. That's what I see in so many of my videos. You get 1 or 2 frames where there's something, and it looks like it's going to collide with a model, but it's not. It's just a little buzzy thing that's close to the camera, and especially when you've got something like a cell phone camera with a very sort of deep field of view, it all looks to be in the same focal plane, but it's not.
That's what I would. Insect is probably more likely, but I don't know. If they go out there,
sandfly brings down bomber. Yeah.
The whole thing.
Well, It is a tragedy, and they've got the radio. They've got the radio traffic from the guy on the ground who wasn't qualified to be in charge of that sort of a thing, telling that Air Cobra to take the lead, and that's why he cut across. So it was a complete Swiss cheese accident. And then the other big, well, not big, luckily the people survived, but did we all see the arrestor landing of, I've forgotten what it was.
It was a precautionary landing. Google do it.
Was it? Oh, yes, it was. Yes, just like Google did with Wing. You're exactly right. Works big or small. And I think, Ian, Mad, we've got to know, what are you doing with those goggles? People are speculating. We know you're either watching Bruce's OnlyFans or pornography.
It can only be pornography.
I'm just looking at my OnlyFans status page here. He's spending a lot of time.
It's just spinning on and on.
Do you like the new uploads, Ian? Do you like them?
The things he does.
Put them up just for you.
He does the things Bruce does. You wouldn't think an 8-year-old nearly could be so nimble. That I can promise you. Yeah, you'd be amazed where the ping pong balls come from. I can promise you that.
There is his only fan. There it was. Very good, Bruce.
Although there is actually a thumbnail, a very recent thumbnail of a near naked Bruce that he released. So I can confirm there is some spicy content out there.
I haven't slept since.
If you go searching.
But you can see why I didn't do the beauty vlog.
That puts lots of us to shame, but anyway.
No, I'm trying to find the problem, and I can't. And something has changed, and I think I know what happened, but I haven't got enough evidence to go and blame them yet. It's how it is.
DJI assassins?
No, it looks like they've closed down one of the FCC hacks, but it was working. And I'm trying to understand it. And hacks is completely the wrong term, because it's an undocumented feature is the correct term for this, without a button. It's a feature where if you happen to put a text file on an SD card, it just happens to do something. There's no code required for that at all, is there? So, but no, I've just been doing some tests, and it's been a crazy couple of weeks with the launches, and we finally got over the big hurdle that has been the big launch that everyone knew about. And it's now more understanding than the product itself.
Ian, does that mean it's a defective product?
No, unfortunately, what it allowed you to do wasn't exactly legitimate in the UK, but it is important in certain parts of the world. It's not for the
12?
UK.
Was it that one?
No, it's 03. It's the FCC on 03. Is what's disappeared.
Why would they do that? Are they sucking up to Ofcom or something?
Well, I don't know. And this was working, and this is where I'm thinking, because obviously I had early access and I was working in early access, and then I made a video saying it's working, and I am 99% I did that on public firmware, and now it's not. And this is where I'm a bit lost, because it's like I've got a video showing it working because I recorded it on film. Now it won't work, and you're like, well, what's changed? So
it's nothing to do with your track record of burning stuff up.
It could be. No, but no, we've had a busy, week and a half, 2 weeks. For me, it was quite nice because I wasn't involved with the manufacturer, so I could do and say what I wanted. I managed to upset them about 4 days before, as I said to Sean. I made that video with a heatsink, and I got asked to take it down, and I said no. Yes.
No.
Talking of deep fakes, yeah.
Yeah. So I was.
You own the copyright to that, Ian, don't you?
Well, yeah, and it was made with, where is it? Where is my trusty 3D printed ear unit? And the worst thing is, they weren't even clever enough to see that it was 3D printed because it's the wrong color. But so there was some irony in that. But yeah, I was asked to take the video down, and I refused because I'm not under NDA, and that's it. So that was it. But no, it's been an interesting 2 weeks.
Have you not ever signed an NDA with DJI?
Oh, about 50, but as far as I'm concerned, they're out the door now.
But is that legally out the door? Did you look at the term of
some of the things I've said, Bruce? If they could have held me to it, they would have come after me.
Assassins are cheaper.
I thought a lot of the reviews for that thing were very samey, almost, dare I say it, scripted. They were all saying basically the same things and the same gee whiz about it as well. I've even forgotten. I mean, I'm that interested in it. I've forgotten the bit I saw the similar, but it was.
Analog's about to make a comeback.
It is, and I took a very different approach. I've not reviewed this product, and I'm probably not. I've gone down a completely different route, which is data, and just what it is and how it is. And look, you don't need to review this. I know everyone was going to trip over themselves. DJI had their KOLs who they worked with on day one, which was great. And actually, whilst what started as annoyance that I was being ignored turned actually into something really good, because it gave me the freedom to do whatever I wanted on launch day and not worry about it. And I just lined up 5 videos. I had 5 videos lined up because I'd been given access in the background by some amazing people who broke some agreements that they had, but that's how the world works sometimes. And yeah.
Yeah, well, you got ahead of the crowd, didn't you? But yeah, I am surprised at how samey the videos are. So it either means
it's not a big product, though, guys. It's a standalone Avatar. Like, you know, if we take it, it is a big step forward for what they had. But look, digital FPV has landed big time now. We've got 3 companies fighting over each other.
And we learned that fat sharks are no longer one of them, really, in the big scheme of things.
I didn't even know about that until Bruce said before on air, and that's gonna change everything. Well, it won't, but what it just goes to show.
I can see the thumbnail. This changes everything.
No, I'm just thinking, do you think Cadex would buy them? Do you think it's worth Cadex buying that brand, Bruce?
What? No, it wouldn't be worth them buying the brand. They've established their own thing.
They've shot themselves down, haven't they?
Yeah.
Why would you get married when you've got the girlfriend?
Yeah. It's just interesting.
It's the experience talking.
I don't know. You know, is Fat Shark really worth with Rotor Riot? It's an interesting comment, because Rotor Riot's a media company that I don't see makes money. I don't know if it makes money. I don't see in any world it makes money. It's a shop and a YouTube channel. Now, the YouTube channel, based on the numbers they do, is not going to drive a full production crew and all of that stuff. So you're left then when the income from the shop. Now, it could be a potentially very clever business model. But then again, how much did Flight Test get from it in the end? It wasn't that much. They had to rely on donations, didn't they, to make it work?
Yeah. Well, it's what interests me is kind of more is that they're putting their hat in the ring with Teal, and really Teal have sold 4/5 of whatever that phrase is in the big scheme of things.
No, they're surging. I read the press release. They're surging.
They're surging.
Yeah, but they're selling it at 10 times the cost of everyone else. So their profit's probably okay. When you sell a toilet seat for 100 grand, you don't have to sell many of them.
Toilet seat, but anyway, well, maybe
it's a nice toilet seat.
Yeah, when you sell a toilet seat to the military for 100 grand, you don't have to sell many of them, do you? Do you know what I mean?
Well,
yeah, but the product's got to work nicely. That's the other thing. The product's got to prove it works nicely, and I think they've had.
Oh, really? How much stuff have they bought that doesn't work? The military, like those bomb detectors, remember?
Yeah.
Yes. But there's like an open rift going in between, and I'm gonna have to drop off. But the open rift between what it would like the Pickhawk and the Autopilot people, and the military is a lot of these people are using these open source autopilots. That's a big mess, and a lot of people just want DJI capabilities and DJI prices, which I don't see happening.
And have you seen encryption this week on that? You know, DJI have been certified again with that's their full link. Okay, that's only on commercial products. That's only on the industrial stuff. But that is full AES 256. That's end to end. You know, they are ticking some boxes now, regardless of what else we think.
Yeah, you know, I think that they really have themselves to blame. They could have came clean in the beginning, and I think they'd had a lot better issue with it. I think that's one of the big problems. Unfortunately, I have to go to my day job. I'll have to, maybe next week we could take this up, but thanks again, and nice talking with you guys.
All right, look after yourself. And just like that, he's gone.
It is interesting, isn't it, that you got this US thing, because you know you got DJI getting this certification again. You know, if you look at it, we spoke about this for years. The Skydio thing, the Parrot thing, none of them have taken hold. None of them have really seemed to have done anything big.
Oh, I don't know. I think they've made a lot of money in their little niches,
Yes.
which is partly what they set out to do, wasn't it? They wanted to be small small factories producing high value items to military contracts, and Skydio, what their value must be now with all their AI and everything. Which I've never really seen Skydio as a drone business. I think they're an AI business. No. I think one day someone like Boeing will snap them up, and it will all go down. Right. All of their tech will go into the AAM industry, and
probably Hyundai.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the fact that the American government don't have some kind of lien on them or something. But anyway, so I think some of those have actually done quite well. And the DJI thing with the you can get certified, you can reach a certification. It doesn't mean that they're going to change anything. It doesn't mean that the US are going to backpedal on anything because they've got that. I don't think. It's a good box ticker and it's a good PR thing, but I don't think it will make any difference for them.
I don't think that thing can go through Congress that they're proposing. I can't. That not. I don't think that DJI will dial back any of the sort of entity list and the more recent one or anything else of that nature. I don't think they'll dial back the issue.
It hasn't hurt them. They're still banging away at what they do because I know some guys in the States, and the reality is people want the gear. They find ways around the issues. They're just buying it in other ways. That's just what's happening. They're still using it. When you're a search and rescue and you want a thermal handheld drone to be able to go and save someone's life, the Mavic 2 Enterprise or the Mavic 3 thermal now there's no one who can get near it.
The current restrictions are also very, very narrow anyway, aren't they? It's no federal dollars being spent on them, and no US tech leaving the country to go and help them. So which is still very narrow. You
can rent a toilet seat for $100,000 a year, and in exchange with the toilet seat comes a Mavic 3 thermal for free use for the period of you renting the toilet seat.
Well, don't forget though, it's no flight over federal land, so that includes the bridges, critical infrastructure, and stuff like that. So that's the real
officially
sort of caveat, I suppose. Officially, yes. That's a good comment for you there, Richard. Better than dial-up. He's in Scotland, see, so he's at the top.
And all his work is pro bono. He's retired. Yeah. He does all this for free.
Yeah, well, this last one certainly wasn't it? It's interesting. So, what else have we seen this week? We've just gone over the hour, 45 seconds.
Did you see Rolls-Royce have got a gas turbine engine to run on hydrogen? How clever is that? The Brayton cycle will run on potato peelings if you feed it to it. But I found the interesting thing. This is going to revolutionize air travel. What a load of rubbish, because I did the math. Now, the energy density of hydrogen on a weight-for-weight basis is 3 times that of Jet A1. So people say, oh, so much energy in hydrogen. But if you look at it from a volumetric perspective, things change a bit, because 1 kilo of Jet A1 has 120 megajoules of energy, whereas 1 kilo of hydrogen has 120 megajoules of energy. 1 kilo of Jet A1 has just 42 megajoules of energy. But 1 kilo of Jet A1 requires a volume of about 1.2 liters. The energy equivalent in hydrogen, which is just 350 grams, requires 3,300 liters of storage at 1 atmosphere. And if you compress it to 200 bar, which is about standard for industrial gas compression, it still requires 16 liters. If you liquefy it, so you go cryogenic, then it still requires 5 liters. So it's over almost 5 times as much volume required to store the stuff. And that's before you have all your cryogenic support equipment, such as your containment vessels. And it's never going to be a sustainable transport fuel for gas turbine powered aircraft. But Rolls-Royce think it's good.
It's the last of the fossil fuel industry, though, isn't it? It's the last hurrah.
Well, no, it was wind generated. They generate their hydrogen from wind power, apparently. That's what they were claiming in the article.
Yes, absolutely.
I was going to say 95% of the people watching this didn't understand that, and I didn't either. But I saw your tweet on it at the time, and I thought, Bruce is saying that it's going to write nose it still, so I gave it a leak. Because I thought, because the trouble is with that, a lot of stuff, it is PR, and it's like, it's
virtue signaling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like, always, look at us innovating with this potential.
Well, the fossil
solution.
fuel industry are sat on things that are currently assets, and if they get hydrogen going, those big tanks and all their ways of doing stuff remains an asset for a while. If we move completely electric, then they're sat on a load of non-assets. Well, over the other word, there's another word for that, isn't there?
Yeah.
So
the other thing to look at is hydrogen has already been used in the aviation industry, but the Hindenburg wasn't such a success.
Wow, yeah, that's only because the Americans wouldn't let them have helium. That's helium.
Well, it's a scarce helium. There's not a lot of helium around, and there's less every day. It's not an infinite resource.
Absolutely, no. Quite
and those Nazis on the moon won't let us have the helium-3.
There's transport aircraft usually volume constraints. Yeah, it's hydrogen is there's been various in fact today in South Africa CSIR have announced they are working on a hydrogen drone. And it also just takes so much energy to make the hydrogen. If you have units of energy, you might as well have just used that as a battery in a battery.
And it's the storage as well. I mean, if you're going to compress it, imagine a whole lot of energy goes into compressing that gas. If you're going to compress it to 200 bar, that's a lot of energy required. And you don't get it back because as you release the pressure, it actually gets colder. It actually requires more energy to release it because of the adiabatic effect of the expansion. And then also you've got the problem if you put it in a steel vessel, you can't use steel because steel gets embrittled by hydrogen. The hydrogen atoms make the steel very brittle, so it will explode. And even if you're using so you can't use steel fixtures due to hydrogen embrittlement. And the hydrogen molecule is so small, it seeps through any containment.
Just going to say it does its best to get out because you can't put it in stuff.
Isn't there a Fox Tech one? Isn't there a Fox?
Yeah, there's plenty of fuel cell things. Yeah. There's plenty of things about, but it's just not practical.
It's not. I mean, hydrogen's just it's just a bad idea, but it's a fancy word and it sounds good and it sounds like a wonderful technology. And it sounds
not
green.
Really.
Zero emissions.
The question though is, will it integrate with blockchain?
Blockchain, absolutely. And can we buy it in Bitcoin? I wonder.
Can I mine it with my GPU?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what else have we seen this week? We brief. Go on, mate.
I've seen PDRAO1, the rewritten version, which I was asked to take down off the social group because the CA said it wasn't finalised yet. Can you please take it down? Please don't share stuff. It was only meant for the RAEs. I wasn't told off, but I was kind of, the reason, should we want to get it right before it's shared to the community. But it looks like and sounds like PDRAO1, which we originally thought was basically a replacement for the PFCO. The CA going, no, that was all misdone now. That was a mistake. All this overflight bubbling could have been a mistake. Oh dear. So there's someone somewhere is pushing the CA's buttons, and I reckon it's a DFT. But there's someone somewhere he's pushing the buttons.
Well,
what's really scary is, and I've always kind of maintained this, that if it's easier to get a microlight and fly a microlight, and you've got more regs to fly a drone. If you've got more regs to fly a drone than you have to fly a drone, the world's gone wrong because obviously man is in a microlight. A paramotor, if the rules are so lax to fly one of them,
skin in the game.
I don't care about that. Skin in the game is quite clearly just pure BS because, if there's an accident, horrible as it is with manned aviation, planes land on roads, they've landed on roads, they've sadly been a lot of accidents and killed people.
Power lines are the landing spot du jour.
Yeah, but drones haven't yet fallen out of the sky in the UK and killed anyone. Nor has it happened in
It's only a matter of time.
It will happen one day, but we have to accept that there's always a bit of risk in our lives. You would never get in a car and drive anywhere if you did not accept a bit of risk in your life. Do you know what I mean?
It sounds like you previewed my video.
Sorry, I was just going to say it's been getting less over the years. Everyone's on lighter drones. There's a lot of commercial operators that are doing things, especially if it's like in the city centre or somewhere where it's considered riskier. Even if their permission allows them to fly you know, a Mavic for a full size one, they'll still put a 250G out. They'll they'll kind of de-risk it further themselves. So the actual chances, out of your normal operators that are now flying and doing roof inspections and video and so on, I don't think those drones will ever be killing anyone because they're so light. If this ever happens, it'll be those bigger companies doing deliveries that are having to put up larger drones that are going in reverse the way the industry's done.
Choking hazard.
Funny enough, Ian. Funny enough, I actually have the current. This is so as of today, the 29th of this November, 2022. I have the current active operator IDs in the UK. So, would anyone like to take a guess at this, then? How many current active operator IDs are there?
I have it too. Am I cheating if I answer off the same?
Yeah, so do I. Somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah,
let's run a sweepstake.
Is this all drones you're talking about registered?
Let's see if it's changed actually.
Active operator IDs. Well, you guys will know if it's changed then or not. So it's 191,185
Hang on, I'm pulling it up.
when I have.
Yeah, I'm looking for mine as well. Yeah. What did
Here we go. Here we go.
So that's increased a bit, hasn't it, to where it was, I think, last year?
Last year was 180 odd. So it's up about 10,000 from last year. That's operator IDs. Although I currently have 3, of which only 2 should be only 2 I need. But what's really annoying is, I fly model planes. I should really have one in my own name, but I don't. I just stick my work. I just put my trading as on it.
Are those IDs the operators rather than drones? I can't remember.
That's operator IDs. Remember, you never register a drone in the UK.
Right, okay.
So I've got active operator ID at 181.
I've got 191 here for this year.
I've got that as 2022. Yeah, this is off a report.
What date's
active? This was 1/11/22.
I knew that Raspberry Pi wouldn't handle all the data.
November 2022. Their numbers are a bit screwy unless someone's done a typo.
181,000 operators.
I'm sure I've got another
285
number.
flyer IDs.
So you've got a 10,000 increase in 28 days?
Yeah.
Yes, that doesn't sound
this
right.
is why we paid £4 million for this system, was it?
Yeah. So
it could be because people's renewals come in round about December for when the system originally started. Because everyone did a rush at the start, just as it came live, didn't they? Because it came live a few weeks earlier than it should have done. So there probably is a big boost around December time.
The BMFA bulk renewal.
No,
they want to put the price up, don't they, that?
BMFA's later in the year, so theirs will kick in the 31st of January, I think it is. Now, current active flyer IDs. So operator IDs is an operator to fly your drone. The active flyer IDs are the ones that you need if you're flying anything above 250 grams. How many of them do you think are active in the UK right now?
So this will mainly be commercial operators, won't it? So
no. This is just flyer IDs.
What was your numbers again?
Oh, right. Okay. I see what you're saying.
So this is flyer IDs to say they're on the town. Keep that up there, will you please? Because this is going to be really funny. So active operation authorizations, hold it just there for 2022. Bring up the 2022 one. So active flyer IDs are 308,415 according to this right now.
Well, you win. You beat me. Your number's bigger than mine.
Yeah. Okay. A2CFC.
Yeah. I lost that one. Yeah.
Well, I'll get to PDRA01 in a minute, but current A2CFC is 10,316. That's on the increase. So that's up by about 4,000 on last year.
Now, I know that somewhere I've got another set of numbers. Let me find them. They all come last month or this month.
Just to note on that, the BBC, if you're one of their pilots, if you're just one of their normal camera guys, you can now have a drone, but you have to do an A2 CFC. So that'll probably increase the numbers on that.
Yeah, and companies doing it for a tenner and things. And there've been some ridiculous sales on recently, haven't there?
A2 CFC is just crap anyway. PDRA01 then. How many active operators holders are there now? Bearing in mind, I will tell you, last year it was about 6,000. So how many PDRA 01 holders are there now, do you reckon?
My piece of paper says 7,000.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
And it says 2021 6939.
Yeah, and it's wrong then, because according to this, which is their active one for today, because if you've got the same slide as Gary, it's only 3,699, which means PDRA 01 is on the drop down. A lot of people have shifted across to the A2 CFC by the looks of it. So by my reckoning, people are ditching PDRA 01 because it gets them away from the CAA, so there's no oversight. It saves them an ops manual, less hassle, and they think the A2 CFC is just better for them.
Gary, can you put that slide back up to save me holding mine up to the camera?
I could find
because
it.
the best part of that particular slide that I enjoyed was the forecasts at the top.
Yes, and now those forecasts,
yes.
I don't know how they can even go there with these forecasts.
It does say estimates vary significantly.
It's PwC; they can go anywhere.
It's PwC, yeah, exactly. I mean,
well, what's interesting is, so I asked about PDRA 02 and they said 0. So PDRA 02 doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, so 7,000.
PwC.
900,000 by 2030.
Weren't they supposed to be going for a 3 and a 4 as well?
Pardon?
Weren't they supposed to be going for a 3 and a 4? PDRA,
What?
3 and a 4.
Oh, eventually. Now,
so yeah, all predefined risk assessments for different purposes. That was the objective, which is the way the EU have gone. The EU have now got 4, haven't they?
Well, I think they've got some more than us, but we have OSCs, don't we? So we all know about the OSC, hopefully, where you go for a specific thing, reduce distances.
Yeah.
Last year, there was 111 people holding that. This year, this time, there's now 103. So mine's now gone. I know mine's gone, but there's now 103 people holding them. So everything for the major stuff is slowly dwindling down. All the specific category stuff is slowly actually dwindling. The specific category is in trouble, I think, industry-wise. It's on the reduction. It's not on the increase at all.
I think there's a direct correlation to the amount of regulation that's come in, which makes it incredibly expensive and confusing.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. And then confusion. Why are things being dripped out? Why are the CAA telling those big numbers were to the transport groups? So the men from the CAA are standing up and saying this, and then to another group they're coming with another set of numbers, and another group gets another set of numbers. Why aren't we getting a consistent story and a consistent vision? And that's what we're missing, as a consistent. Where are we going? How are we going to get there? And we change the story as to whoever
you want to argue.
When
you want to argue you're doing successful regulation is when you say, "Oh, look at these predictions for big figures. We're doing so well that everyone wants to jump in and fly a drone." But I don't. They're definitely not going to keep these figures if we keep changing.
Moving the goalposts for people to comply, and then hiding that as well. Keep it here. We'll tell a few people. what we're going to do, and they'll be, because they proclaimed, the getting rid of the C ratings and we're going to do our own thing. But that looks like a gut reaction to me. That doesn't look like a sensible thing to do at all.
Well, the problem is if they should have gone with the C ratings, but because so many people in that consultation went, "Oh no, we don't want that because we've got to spend money on a new drone," that's their excuse. I was one of the few people that when I replied to that, I went, "No, everyone sucks it up and crack on. You can't keep kicking that kind of thing down the road, because if you do that, it's a forever kicking the ball down the road, which is what we're terrible at. We're really good at doing that and then causing ourselves problems. Just suck it up, and we just go, right, C ratings are coming, that's it, everything else, legacy."
Can you have the C ratings and just do some flexibility around the drones that you're already flying, because we haven't got those that comply to it? And there must be sensible ways around this, but I mean, the crux of it is you need common sense for your commercial operators. That's not ultimately the issue.
That's not going to happen
not
now.
getting.
Because CAPS 72, I think it's H, is with the REs. So the REs have H. My contacts wouldn't quite send me that, otherwise H.
The unofficial H, though, it's still not the official H yet. So,
I would have. That would have been online by now. If I got my mitts on it, I'd probably have that. I'd probably have another phone call from Natasha at the CAA saying, "Mark, can you please just take that down because it's not finished." I mean, the PDRA that I saw was like minimalize overflight. And the thing is, commercial operators have always done that. It shouldn't need to be in your operational authorization. It should say, "Do not stop and hover over people," is what it should say. Do you know what I mean? Transit is fine.
Yeah, although it isn't confirmed yet. Of course, that document.
No,
hence, you took it down. It isn't, so we shouldn't.
No, I took it down because Natasha
there is
very nice to
there
me.
is there is the potential for more changes, obviously.
Oh yeah, I think there will be, and there's going to get some feedback that and it's the DFT that are definitely pushing buttons here. Now,
there's your new cap for PDRA. Your new cap is cap 722H.
What's F? What the hell is F? Oh, is F the REE one?
RAEF. It's for the airworthiness. It's a new body.
Now here's the joke here. So you just scroll to how many caps there are. Right. So if you look at how many caps there are, right, you need all those caps to fly a drone, and cap 2024 is going to come in somewhere as well. But that is horrendous. I can go and learn to fly a microlight a lot easier than following those drone rules. It's absolutely crazy that a person can get in a microlight and fly it doing a lot less than you would to fly a drone. It is absolutely bonkers.
Just remember, we're going to do the right thing. Never stop learning, build collaborative relationships, and respect everyone. Just remember that.
That should add to this.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be so bad if things were backed up by science. So if you said, we're getting rid of overflight because we've had these 75 deaths this year from drones falling down on people, and this is the science behind it for why these drones are so heavy like bricks when they're not. You'd be fair enough, but it's the fact that the science is there that tells you that, and this is it as well, is why can't we use some of the science that's out there that's been paid for by the FAA? So the FAA has sponsored Assure UAS to go away and do these tests, and the money's gone in there in the US. Why can't we use those documents? Because they're put there, they're published, they're there for peer review. So either is pay them, do the science, see the same, and see if you agree with it, or accept their science. But what we've done is we either completely pretend it doesn't exist, or we use inappropriate tools. Like we use the drop tool that treats a drone the same as it would a hammer, and say that's fine. And then that tool even comes with a disclaimer that says, do not really. You said something like this is not a reliable calculation or something. It basically says we're giving you this, but we're not taking any responsibility for it. Probably covering themselves for the fact that they underestimate. But it's using that tool. The AAIB was saying that a drone in this day and age could kill. I think from about 5 meters it was a really low height. And I'm thinking that's complete nonsense. So they calculated around, I think, a typical drone these days being somewhere between 2 and 4 kilograms. We all know that's nonsense anyway. If you are going to do the calculation, you should be saying, well, typical drones between 250 and 1 kilogram. But even then, you should be using an appropriate tool, because that tool says that a Mavic Mini, if you're wearing a hard hat, could still kill you. That's bang up at 400 feet. I don't know whether that's the case or not, and I'm not going to test it, but it sounds to me pretty unlikely. And I suspect if you looked at the Assure UAS stuff, that would rule that out, because they were dropping they were dropping in spires onto crash test dummies and stuff. So we need to look at the science, and then if you've got a scientific argument, fair enough. But just changing the rules without anything behind it other than somebody somewhere in an office.
You'll like my upcoming video, because I basically covered all those things. I draw the example of when automobiles first came along back in the late 1800s, everybody feared them because they didn't understand them. So out of ignorance, the regulators decided to be overly cautious and have the little man with the red flag. But very quickly, they saw from the fact that nobody was dying, they could remove the man with the red flag. They adapted to the regulations. As the knowledge of the risk improved, the regulations became more aligned with the level of risk. That's what we're missing in the drone industry today. We're well established.
No, just to step back, because it's an important correction as well. Is when they had the Red Flag Act, actually that went on for decades, and it would have continued on that ignorance, because that was ignorance that was sponsored by the railways, and that's so again you having MPs or blagged, which is what we've seen in the drone world. But it actually took business people, proper level-headed business people that actually cared about the motor industry. And they fought and they fought and they fought, and they got the law changed in the end. And then, the industry prospered and it did well and it created jobs. And that's the problem we've got really with the drone industry. It's getting all this crap.
Well, but look at the thing that caught my eye in this particular thing was look at this slide. This is talking about cranes and drones and made up figures. So this is grown-ups in a room saying, there's going to be 100,000 cranes in the scope of the new regulation 2025, 26. And then 2030, there's going to be 900,000 drones. Oh, my Lord, what are we going to do? So why on earth are these made-up figures here, And
if you believe these as well, which I don't think any of us do, but I would say, why don't you regulate them closer when you can prove that this path?
Gary, could you just go back up two, please?
Sorry, say again.
Just go back up another one, please.
That's this one.
Yeah, service goals. So what I don't see here is time. So we pay significant amount of money to get an operational authorization or an OSC or to do an airspace change, and there is no time obligation connected to it. And you would expect that in a service goal. All we've got here is increase operational efficiency, reduce application error. We don't have anything that times into time. So it still means that we're not going to get operational efficiency because they're not time bound in any way to produce a service.
Yeah. I mean, I know people have got OSCs now for 9 months. 9 months for an OSC. How is a business meant to work like that? You don't.
These changes are taking over 360 days.
But isn't this just finding a load of clip art and putting some words underneath it for the purpose of a slide? Isn't that's what they're doing here?
They're paid by the page.
You pay by the page, exactly. Look, let's put lots of complicated things on it. And, this is slide 27 of 48. You're definitely asleep in the back, aren't you? Register, log in. Look at what's being... Yeah, I'm not...
I mean, there's definitely things that need doing and could be done to modernise and improve things. Look at that as well. This day and age, and that's being presented as a typical commercial drone. It's not.
That's the Gatwick drone, isn't it?
Yeah. Again, that
Oh, look.
Your own documents are reflective.
Who were they tasked by? The DFT. Oh, yeah. All right. Oh, then. Yeah. Future electronics security functionality. Are we paying attention yet, kids?
On this point, actually, there was some sort of meeting that was going on in the EU today. No surprise, Gatwick was specifically cited and is being used to sort of justify rollout of CUAS across Europe. So they're looking into that now. And there was mention as well of putting ADS-B again on drones, which I thought something that was
What,
already
like
out
this?
of the window.
Like this?
Not enough space.
Like this?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So I don't really know where all this, why this keeps coming back.
It's because the people making these rules, making these decisions, making these proclamations have no experience with this. I mean, we have the cleaner at the hospital writing the book on neurosurgery. It's happening in this industry time and time again. The people who need to be involved in making these decisions are marginalized and sidelined. It's industry and it's senseless bureaucrats doing all this stuff, but no nothings.
But the one thing I would say in this is there are bits that could be modernised and everyone would benefit from it. Like as we mentioned earlier, the NOTAM notification, or when you do no-fly zones, all that stuff being more electronic, and you put it in, and then it's there for everyone to know about. So again, especially if you've got to query it,
object to them. You know, they're publishing NOTAMs 3 or 4 days beforehand.
Yes,
that's just not acceptable. Because how can you challenge it on a competitive basis? You just can't. There's not enough time. By the time you integrate with the CAA and notify a stakeholder who just happens to be on holiday or whatever the case may be, you've missed the window. The event's done. And so, you know, the notification time frame should be mandated to be so much more than what it is right now in order to give people a fair chance to challenge it.
Well, hang
This
on.
is another example of anti-competitive behaviour in my view.
Yeah, I had a look at one, and I can't remember the exact timings off the top of my head, but I think from when it started, so when it was someone actually started writing the thing to when it ended up online, because it goes from goes like to A to B to C back to A, that it was actually a 4 to 6 week period of time. So the root cause problem is a process taking place that's very inefficient. So it's not that someone's been a dick about it and just doing it at the last minute, pointing up and thinking, I'll catch out the drug users. It looks like it's actually just a clumsy process. So a lot of that can be improved, you know, processes, systems, and so on. So I'm sure there's lots that the CAA can do to make up the whole operating a drone and that, so that everyone's much happier. So there's definitely positives in doing that. It's it's just the whole movement of the goalpost that's the issue.
But who's going to be in the pay chain? That's the thing. None of these things are going to come for free. And it's
some of this, though, if you modernize it, you actually make it cost you less. If you've got less people sending like emails from A to B to C, where you can just have a system where it's a form, you put it in, and it goes boom, I'm firing it out straight through an API.
Well, that's what they've done with the PDRA application. So instead of doing a manual PFCO one like we used to do, the PDRA one is much more automated.
Yeah, and the thing that frustrated me actually with that, it should have been at the start, was because operators were doing an ops manual and they didn't want to change from 1 year to the next year to the next year to the next year. They were happy to being as they are. These are my processes, you know, the how I'm going to start the drone and whatever else. And you'd stick to that. So you'd only ever have to do it once. And the only thing you'd change was if you bought a new drone, you just enter that. And I never understood why this kind of thing wasn't all just an online form. And then you don't even have to change it. And if you don't have to change it, nobody has to review it. So you've removed all that cost burden of somebody looking at something that hasn't changed from last year.
The issue is, of course, they've changed a lot of the regulation. And so the terminology in that regulation had to change with it. And that's where we all got caught out. Year in, year out, they kept changing terminology.
Yeah, but that kind of needs knocking on that. And there needs to be some common sense. I mean, you know, when you get rid of UAS and UAV because of the word unmanned, when you could have just done like the FAA did and put it as uncrewed, you know, somebody needs an absolute slap on the head of what? Hang on a minute, what is going on? Somebody there is literally just pissing away money from a very pointless decision.
Get woke, Ian. Get woke.
The meaning of the word.
Ian, what's really stupid though is the word unmanned means uncrewed.
Yes. So I mean, it kind of doesn't matter.
But still you.
If you have the mindset that it matters and we must do something, just
hang on. I spent a fortune on changing the U of SUS news. It cost me an absolute fortune to change them all over. I can't go back on it now.
The thing is, the worst thing about it all is that it gets pushed down to the operator. And then we've got the argument of, well, you've got to change your entire thing because somebody's decided a word that was perfectly fine just needs to be changed to something else that means exactly the same thing as it did anyway.
Funny enough, in Gary's slides that he showed us a minute ago, it said pilot in command, but you're not allowed to have pilot in command in your ops manual anymore, but it's in that slideshow. It's like, oh, come on.
It's two sets of rules.
It's just ridiculous.
Oh, Ian, I have to correct you on that red flag rule too. That was actually the original red flag rule was actually for people to walk in front of locomotives with the red flag, which is why it was struck in the early 1800s or mid 1800s. It was actually struck out in about the same time as the one in America, because in America they introduced it and it was struck out 2 years after its introduction. So the original red flag in the UK wasn't the same as the one in the USA. And in America they quickly realised it was.
One, to be fair, that's specific.
Yeah. In America they quickly realised that it was stupid to have a man in front of with a red flag in front of a car. It was holding everything back. But the CAA and the FAA and all the other regulators around the world think it's still a really good idea to have these overly restrictive regulations on the safest branch of aviation that has ever been and ever will be, with an impeccable record of safety.
There's a good example there, Bruce, though, about different countries. You know, someone will realise this is stupid and do something about it, and then another country, well, it'll drag on for decades and be a fight. And
yeah, but remember, back in the mid-1800s, there weren't any cars. It applied to trains. And cars came about at the same time in America and the UK. So it only had effect for 2 years in the UK as well in terms of cars on road.
Oh, I'm not convinced with that with the UK, because there's a whole thing that it went on a few decades before it was all...
Look up Wikipedia. It's always right.
Wikipedia says that.
Or if that fails, check the Daily Mail.
Oh, look, we're definitely going into rants. And I'm actually amazed that I'm still here and the batteries are still working up the way.
We're disappointed you're still here.
One quick thing before we go, Gary, there's a question that was in here.
Yeah.
I forget we have a US audience as well, so apologies. That's very rude of me. But when I talk about freedom of information, there's a difference in the US. You can actually get lawyers and you can sue to get the information. And we can't do that here. So there was some question of why don't you go down that route? So in the UK, we can't see, but what we do have is what's called the ICO, Information Commissioner's Office. And they essentially act like it's legal arm above. So you can escalate it to them and they'll then decide if they take that forward. And generally they do, although they're quite pragmatic. So we kind of can get to where you can in the US, but it's a different process. I think that's probably
we have a statutory process to do that.
Well, Patrick has some because they can slow it down in America, so you get to the ICO faster.
Yes.
In England than we haven't lawyered up to get any, but we've had some in for more than 5 years now. Nothing's been said. So we're actually beginning to forget what they were about because we've
I think the worst I've had
stories.
Somewhere around about 2 years, and that shouldn't be happening. But yeah, it's partly because actually this is partly just shows the problem in the UK with how the freedom of information is dealt with. Is they've got a 9-month backlog getting through the number of complaints they have. So that many people are being unfairly treated trying to use it. That they've just got a backlog of complaints. So that's just the delay.
When I launched my complaint against Sussex Police, it took 2 years. The ICO, for the audience perspective, they have their own lawyers. So 2 years, and then they got a lawyer involved. Then there were some issues around COVID, and the police moaned about COVID and the fact that they couldn't do anything during COVID, which was bizarre. The lawyers backed off, and then the lawyers had to be re-engaged again. So it took almost 3 years, I think, in the end, to get the information. I mean, it's that really, in my own mind, is just disgraceful.
Oh, well, it reminds me. One thing you did get in your information was a list of the equipment they had, what drones they had.
That's right.
Am I okay to quote that out of that? Because I know the rest of it. You want it private with the
yeah.
But I'm okay just to mention just the hardware.
Well, you've got me on public record now. Yeah.
Well, I did actually drop you an email under what I
You
said.
did.
I get you now. Whilst you're live
Public
on
implies
air.
somebody's
I'm
watching.
testing. Yeah, I've no
Yes.
problem with it at all. It's
Yeah,
they've got to close it.
it's just kind of interesting because we
Well, it's
we
what we as
know.
taxpayers have paid for, right?
What's that? Sorry.
It's what we as taxpayers have bought for the Sussex Police.
Yeah. And the very fact you've had 3 years, that's a lot of taxpayers' money. It's funny, actually, that there was a note. The ICO got so fed up, they did like it was like three, might even more. It was several pages of complaint, like to Sussex Police. And they even said, we should be considering the public purse. So what they were getting at was, you're costing your own residents in Sussex a lot of money because they're funding you as a police force, and you're putting lawyers up to fight information going out. And at the opposite end, you've got the ICO having to employ lawyers to fight for this information out. So you're just getting public money and you're just burning it. I just thought it was interesting. They kind of got no power to stop the police doing this as such, other than pointing out, there isn't a thing that says, well, you shouldn't be wasting money and dragging these things out. You can kind of get away with that, providing, within...
The naming and shaming, really, on the ICO's website doesn't do an awful lot.
Actually, there's a thing with the ICO, hopefully they'll change it, but they don't actually keep a track of their costs in fighting individual cases. But that's what we need as well, because for me, things like with the Gatwick were interesting, because you can add, what I wanted to do was add the cost up, not only of, doing the legal and the thing it cost itself, but actually saying this much tens of thousands of taxpayers' money is being wasted actually fighting to get the information out. Because that would kind of be, you could then put a full figure on it at the end, which at the moment, unfortunately, you can't do. The ICO's time is going unrecorded. But yeah, it would be good to know just how bad it's got for just being difficult.
Yeah.
All right. It's late. We've been here a long time. Dear viewer, wherever you are in the world, thank you very much for joining us. Well done, Richard. Well done on getting that some movement on that council problem. It would be very interesting to go next, and very interesting that you're at the heart of this new threat or problem, and it'd be very interesting to see where it goes. So wherever you are in the world, look after yourselves. We'll see you again 2100 GMT next week. Cheers for now. One click